The first thing I would like to share with you is the etymology of development. For me, this is very important. And I feel it is equally important for you because you are all learned persons involved in teaching in the universities and colleges, dealing with graduate students, that means the mature students. So I think we should start the topic with some understanding of etymology, its history of the word. Perhaps you recall in your college days when you were a student, on the day one, most of the teachers, our professors, would tell you the meaning of the topic. For instance, biology. The teacher will tell you how this biology word was coined and the origin of the word. Similarly, here in development, we are going back to etymology. It's quite interesting. Look at here. As you can find it in internet, I mean in Google or other pages, it was in 1756 that the word or similar word like development came into being, meaning a gradual unfolding. Quite interesting. Unfolding. A full working out or disclosure of the details of something. And noted that this was the origin of this word was Old French language, that is développer, which is no more in use. I'm not sure. Sachi, who is a Vietnamese lady by birth, because Vietnam people, they speak French in the old time. I don't know these days. Anyway, this is Old French, but not its use. So after 1756, after 40 years, after 4 decades, the English language also started using it to describe the internal process of expanding and growing. Please note that this, what is this 1756? This is the mid of 18th century. Please recall the Industrial Revolution. This was the time when the Industrial Revolution was taking place with full gear. New inventions were taking place. New ideas were taking place. So the word development came into being to describe the expanding and growing in English language. In 1836, it meant advancement through progressive stages. And in 1845, it was used for photographic sense, in photography. I'm not sure whether some of you or anyone had experience of working in the dark room. I had. For my graduate thesis, I had to develop, please note the word, develop the photographs of the photos that I took through the microscope. My graduate thesis was on shell chromosomes. So I had to develop the photos. So that time I came across this word develop. I didn't know the word that time. So that was the developing the photograph. So in photographic sense, in 1845, the word development was used to induce the chemical changes necessary to cause a latent picture or image to become visible. Quite interesting, isn't it? And then in 1864, in English, American English, development was used to become known or come to light. And in 1865, the word was used by the real estate managers or the real estate business in the sense of convert land into practical or profitable use. Look how the word, been progressing. And in 1960, that means 60, 40, 50, 60, yeah, 60 years ago, the nations that are advanced in economic, industrial, and social conditions. So the word development that we frequently use these days came into being after 1950s. The sense, the concept that we are using these days. And it is said in many of the literature that the word was first used by Truman, Henry Truman. He was president of the United States of America just after the Great War II. Because after Great War II, all the nations were, going through a very tumultuous history. On one hand, rebuilding, reconstruction. On the other hand, again, independence, getting independency from the colonies. So that was the time that Truman, for the first time, used, it is said so in some of the literature, the word development. And quite interestingly, it is said that some of the critics, right, they say even Truman didn't know the meaning of development that time. Well, that's the critics' view. Well, with this, I'm going into another approach, that is the disciplinary approaches to development. So that was the etymology, the progress of the word development, how it started and how its meaning became wider and wider. So next is the disciplinary approaches to development, because the word development is used not only by the planners, economists, and politicians, but by the people from a wide spectrum of disciplines. I have few here, not all. The first is in biology. In biology, development means the progressive changes in size, shape, and function during the life of an organism. And in education, it means physical as well as mental growth of a child. In economics, which we frequently hear or use these days, there is an increase in the size and pace of the economy such that more products and services are produced. And what about in sociology? In sociology, it's a process that creates growth, progress, positive change, or the addition of physical, economic, environmental, social, and demographic components. Finally, in political science, development is bringing about social change that allows people to achieve their human potential. So this I'm describing because once we go to the classroom to teach our graduate students or undergraduate students on development or sustainable development, First, we have to be clear what does it mean by development. We have to stand on the same page, especially when you are having students from different disciplines. For instance, I teach the graduate students of development studies, and they come from different disciplines. Some of them are, of course, environmental scientists, some of them are biologists, some of them are, having a graduation in education, some of them economists, of course, social, some of them engineering, some even medical science, and sometimes they are from social service, some of them are from journalism, some of them are from political science as well. So let's not forget that our audience, that means our students, they are not from the same background. So when you teach them, when you start giving a lecture, the meaning of the word is very, very important. You have to try to bring them and make them stand on the same page so that they understand what do you mean. What do you want to say? It's quite interesting. You must have heard, Goethe, one of the greatest philosophers from Europe. He had said, the greatest tool or the invention of the human being is the language, the words. None of the biological entities and species other than human being have sentences or words or language. We do have. So this is the greatest invention that human being did. But unfortunately, this is again our limitation. Why it is our limitation? Because for you, the same word may mean something else, not exactly the same. You got my point, right? For instance, if I say blue, some of you might be thinking the sky. Some other might be thinking of the ocean. Why? It's very simple. For example, I'm from Nepal. And also here I have some friends, right, from Afghanistan, from Bhutan, who do not have ocean. So for us, when we are taught by our mothers or teachers to explain you blue, they would be most probably showing you the clean, the open sky, the blue sky, because we don't have ocean. But for those, our friends, like from India, Bangladesh, or maybe we do not have here, but if you have friends from Maldives, or Sri Lanka, for them, the blue means the ocean. So the words are the greatest achievement or invention, but again, these are also our limitation. That's why I give emphasis while starting my lecture to clarify the meaning of the word that you are going to teach. For instance, the topic today is development. So we must in the beginning, we must try to understand what does it mean? What is the root of this word? How does it develop? How did it evolve? And what does it mean in different disciplines? The definition of development, I found many definitions of development. One is the dictionary meaning or definition, and the other is definition by the scholars of development representing different disciplines. Here I have one such, published by SAYS Publication. According to this publication, there are 3 discernible definitions of development. 1, historical and long-term and arguably relatively value-free. That is, development as a process of change, simply. The second is definition related to an evaluative of indicator-led, based on value judgment, is no value-free. Based on value judgment, you have the indicators, you have the goal, you have the measurements like short, medium, and long term. For instance, Millennium Development Goals or Sustainable Development Goals. The third is postmodernist. By word, you know, postmodernist, they are anarchy. Means, you know, they don't have any rule. They don't follow any rule. So the postmodernist view or definition of development, it draws attention to the ethnocentric and ideologically loaded Western conception of development and raising the possibilities of alternative conceptions. The same thing is shown in the picture here. Development as a long-term process of structural social transformation. Development as a short to medium-term outcome, desirable targets. And third, the development as a dominant discourse of Western modernity. So these are 3 discernible definitions of development. Now, I would like to take you to a journey of development in philosophical perspective. I'm sure many of you had a course on philosophy while doing a PhD, or maybe you are planning to take this course. It's quite interesting. So for me, philosophy is a worldview. How do you see the world? That is philosophy. And it is everywhere. Philosophy is everywhere. Well, philosophy is also a discipline like biology, environmental science, chemistry, physics, like that. Because there are courses offered in philosophy at undergrad and grad and PhD level or post. But here, what I mean to say is philosophy is everywhere. Philosophy is there in nature. Philosophy is there in the subjects or disciplines. Disciplines of what? Any disciplines. So you have philosophy of mathematics. You have philosophy of English or language. You have philosophy of biology. You have philosophy of computer science. What not? Of course, there is philosophy of development. So let's explore what is development in philosophical perspective. In philosophical perspective, development is an ontological characteristic of the cosmos. Look, now you are out, you are not only out from your room, but not only out from your earth, but you are in cosmos now, in universe. Imagine how this universe began. That's a development. Perhaps you must have read somewhere there was Big Bang some 12 billion years ago. And the Earth, which is a member of solar system, came into exist some 4.5 billion years ago. So this is the development. So it is an ontological characteristic of the cosmos, of the universe. Your mountains are developing. Everything is moving towards somewhere. It is moving towards somewhere. Let me briefly tell, if someone has not taken this course of philosophy, what does it mean by ontology? Look, in philosophy, we have three major branches. In philosophy, we have three major branches: metaphysics, epistemology, axiology. I hope you can read it in your screen. It is there. I have written here, branches of philosophy. So three major branches. Metaphysics, it deals with reality, your existence, who you are, what is the sky, what is this universe, what is this earth, what is this mountain, what is this water. Reality you want to know. Just imagine, do you think your friend think the same way that you are thinking about the reality? We call it metaphysics. In metaphysics, you have the questions about existence and being, which we call ontology. So in metaphysics, in reality, there are two more branches. One is ontology, the other is cosmology. So ontology is the question about existence and being. Philosophers said, for example, when you were young, you used to ask a lot of questions. What is that? What is this? Why it is so? That is the ontology. In fact, you already had become a philosopher in that sense. Maybe some of you have children. Don't you ask a lot of questions? They ask a lot of questions, and you should allow them to ask the question. I know you don't have answers to every question. I know it. They will find it, no worry. Because they want to know the reality of their existence. That is ontology. So the rest is epistemology, axiology. Epistemology deals with knowledge. For instance, how your knowledge is accumulated. You know so many things, right? How do you know it? How do you know that you know? How do you accumulate the knowledge? And where it is stored? You would say in your mind. Where is that mind? How do you come to understand the earth, the world, the society that you understand? That is knowledge. That is the epistemology. And then you have the value system, right? This is good, this is bad, this you should do, this you should not do. That is axiology. So I don't want to explain more on it. Just bringing back to the philosophical perspective of development. So development is an ontological characteristic of the cosmos. Don't you see the houses in your town, in your city, growing every day? Don't you see them? Don't you see the roads being constructed? New roads you see. Every other day you see new things coming up. So development is an ontological characteristic. It's an existence. And next view is that development must necessarily be progressive. It must move towards some goal. It must be progressive, moving somewhere. If it doesn't move ahead, that is retrogression. That is not development. That's anti-development. Like in the universe, you say the universe is expanding. We are moving around the sun, and the sun is moving around the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And this galaxy is again moving around somewhere. So moving somewhere in progressive. If it doesn't move that way, either it moves backward or it moves in circular way. And thirdly, in philosophical perspectives, some of the philosophers say that the ultimate aim of development is the maximization and control of matter by man. Let me not explain much. Let you think, what does it mean? I'll just give you some clue. I just mentioned, for example, you see new buildings coming up in your town. I gave you example, new plants or trees growing in your nearby village. So somebody has planted it. Somebody has built it. What is that? That is the matter. The building is a matter. The plant is also a matter. So ultimate goal of development becomes controlling of that matter by man. Maximization of that matter by man. That's one philosophical perspective of development. Now, let me move into the theories, because we are running out of time. We waited for 5 minutes, so in 5 minutes, I will conclude this first part. There are theories of development. Some of you are already an experienced faculty, experienced teachers of development studies, so you know very well. Look, I'm a learner actually. As I mentioned last time in our introduction, I'm a research scientist, interested in development and now teaching development. So I'm a student actually, I'm a learner. So I found 3 major theories and 4 not minor, but less discussed theories. But these days, all 7 are mentioned, which I have collected here. The first is modernization theory of development. The second is structuralism theory of development. Third is dependency theory of development. Fourth, neoclassical theory of development. Fifth, post-development theory. Sixth, sustainable development, which is our main focus of this course, of this training course. And seventh, human development theory, which is very, very popular these days. Everybody would like to know what is SDI of your country, Human Development Index. So that is human development theory. So these are very popular theories advanced by some scholars of development. Let's see. Very briefly, this is just to remind you, what does it mean? The first is modernization theory. It's casts development as a uniform evolutionary route that all societies follow, from agricultural, rural, and traditional societies to post-industrial, urban, and modern forms. Structuralism, it focuses on structural aspects which impede the economic growth of developing countries. Third, dependency theory, the notion that resources flow from a periphery of poor and underdeveloped states to a core of wealthy states, enriching the latter at the expense of the former. The fourth is the neoclassical growth theory, which was introduced by Robert Solow and Trevor Swan in 1956. It states that economic growth is a result of 3 factors: labor, capital, and technology. The fifth one is sustainable development. We will discuss in details. Just to mention here, to be fair, sustainable development, it's an idea that human societies must live and meet their needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The official definition of sustainable development was developed for the first time in Brundtland Report in 1987. I'm not sure whether you have pondered on the meaning of this definition. It sounds very philosophical, doesn't it? Look, the word it has selected. Like, without compromising the ability of future generations. What does it mean? So you do development, but you don't compromise the ability of the future generation. Who is future generations? Your own children that are going to replace you in bad sense. In good sense, going to continue. You want you to be continued, don't you? That's the human goal, human race goal, every race goal, the goal of every race, every species. So you don't compromise the ability or the need of the future generations while you do the development. That is sustainable development. It reads very philosophical. Mind it. Read it again and find the meaning. The sixth is the human development approach. which insists that the fundamental aim of development policy should be to expand opportunities that people have to lead meaningful lives. There are many beautiful books on human development approach. One I have mentioned here, which I will show you later. Now you can find the final one, that is the post-development theory, which argues that there is no universal model of development to be followed, and that current ideas around development have been constructed by experts in Western countries who have tried to impose their beliefs on the developing world. That is, they are a form of Eurocentric discourse. This is post-modernist or post-development theory. So these are just to remind you the emphasis or the focus of the 7 different theories of development. And I have here a book by David Simon, published in 2006, 50 Key Thinkers of Development. If you haven't gone through this book, you can have a look at it. Because, ultimately, development is a product of human thinking. It's a human perspective. You can derive your own theory, or you can bring your own definition of development. It's all by, thinking. And it's a multifarious. So David Simon has collected, based on his own, justification, 50 key thinkers. And they include modernizers like, I don't know all of them. I know some of them, and I have read some of them. And it is better if we could read all of them, because we want to become a good faculty of development study, don't we? Like he has included in this 50 key thinkers on development, like modernizers like Kindleberger, Perroux, and Rostow, and dependency theorists like Frank, Hurtado, Cardoso, and Amin, progressive and critical modernists like Hussman, Prebisch, Helena Sen, Strutin, and Wang, political leaders enunciating radical alternative visions of development such as Mao Zedong, Nkrumah, Nyerere, progenitors of religiously or spiritually inspired development such as Gandhi, Aryabhata, Vivekanand, and developing environmental thinkers like Anil Agrawal, Blackie, Brookfield, Ostrom, the Nobel laureate, and Sachs, Jeffrey Sachs. International institution builder like Singer, Hammarskjöld, Cowell, and Ulhak. Anti and post-development thinkers, activists like Escobar, Ghosh, Quijano, and Roy. You can add more, because there are many more than 50 thinkers on development. You can add, no problem. These are the 50 selected by David Simon. And finally, let me briefly mention about the end of history by Francis Fukuyama. You'll be wondering, what is the relation of development and end of history? Look. After, as I mentioned, the Second World War, after it ended in 1945, all the countries, they moved towards for reconstruction of their country and industrialization. And many new economic giants emerged, like Japan. And that time, if you recall, in 1950s or after 1945, there were two major poles. That was the time of Cold War, right? One pole was led by Soviet Union, so-called communism, and the other pole led by USA and Western European countries, so-called capitalism. And in 1990, the Soviet Union collapsed for one or many reasons. And then the collapse of Soviet Union, which claimed itself a socialist country towards communism, the collapse of Soviet Union was a celebration from the rest of the world. And then this book appeared by Francis Fukuyama, a political thinker from the United States of America. And in this book, I'm sure some of you have already gone through, just reminding you. Francis Fukuyama argues that history should be viewed as an evolutionary process, okay? He has used the word evolutionary instead of development here. And that end of history, in this sense, means that liberal democracy is the final form of government for all nations. That was his conclusion. And he said, the end of history would mean the end of wars and bloody revolutions. Auguring in ends, men would have no large causes for which to fight. They would satisfy the needs through economic activity. But they would no longer have to risk their lives in battle. They would, in other words, become animals as before the bloody battles that began history. Once our physical and mental status are satisfied, we no longer have any use for one of the things that has been driving us toward an historical end. We no longer need to impose our dignity upon others. So the end of history, as Francis Fukuyama insisted, is the state of an ideal situation of development. So though it has meant the word history, but he doesn't mean the history by, historical perspective. He means by the evolutionary process, the development process. So that was in 1992. But what happened? He claimed so, or he forecasted so. But what happened? There was the rise of China as an economic superpower. Beyond his imagination. This is a graph that I picked up from Statista. As you can see here, China In 2002, it shared the global GDP 8.1%, lower than EU and lower than USA. It was in 2002. That was 8.1%. But after 20 years, in 2022, what happened? Look, it has topped 18.8%, which is more than USA, which is more than EU. So that is a challenge to Francis Fukuyama's end of history. The economic growth that is developing, okay, in economic sense, is continuing. So China's economy is in historic transition. One example is not only China, the other countries are also coming up. Look at this, another infographic that I picked up from Statista. After China, there is US, and there is India. There is India, which has global share of scientific publications, 5.31, which is more than that of Germany, Japan, UK, Russia, Italy, which claim all the time the giant of the scientific research. This I'm bringing because development is, as we have understood, not only the economic growth, but the knowledge, amassing of the knowledge, production of the knowledge package. And this production of knowledge you can see in the publication, in the journal publication. Why? Each journal article is based on research. So now you can see here, China has topped. This is the data from 2018, 4 years back. Second is US, third is India, and they are growing every year. So the development of knowledge system, the amassing of knowledge is also increasing. And you know, everybody knows, which system China follows. Everybody knows which system USA follows. And we know which system India follows. Beside the system, the different system they are following. System means the political, economic system. They are growing. So there is no end of history. There will be no end of history. Also look at this next figure. China overtakes US in volume of AI research. So now the development has shifted from one paradigm to other paradigm. We can discuss a lot on these. So finally, this is a book that I would like to recommend all of you to have it. Advancing Human Development, Theory and Practice. I think it's sponsored by UNDP. And it has very interesting chapters, as you can see here, like in the contents. The first is evolution of development thought, from growth to human development. Number 2, should happiness or human development be the main development objective? Number 3, the relationship between human development and economic. 4th, success and failure in human development, 1980-2014. 5th, successful transition towards a virtuous cycle of human development and economic growth, country studies. 6, human development beyond SDI. 7, capabilities and human development beyond the individual, the critical role of social institution and social capabilities. 8, the politics of progress in human development, and finally, achievement, challenge, and the way forward. I would suggest all of you to have this book. It can be a very good resource for you to teach the development topics, which is the precursor of sustainable development. He survived nearly 100 years, from 1893 to 1990. He was born in Sichuan, in China, in 1893. Imagine China in 1893. More than 100 years ago. How was China? Just imagine. It was perhaps the poorest country in the world at that time, with the civil war, poverty, and the famine, disaster, flood, whatnot. So the story begins from that. And in 1918, Jimmy Yan, he graduated from Yale University in the United States of America. He must have gone to Yale, not by aeroplane, but by ship. Because that time, they didn't have an aeroplane to cross the Atlantic or Pacific. So you must have gone by a ship. And after graduation from Yale, immediately after graduation from Yale in 1918, he went to France. Here it is mentioned 1917. Sometimes it is quite difficult exactly because nobody has recorded the dates so correctly. Anyway, after graduation, Jimmy Yan went to France to work with Chinese laborers who were working during World War I. Let me remind you, in the current world, at present, many of Nepalese go to Gulf countries, Malaysia, and other countries as a labor migrant. Same with India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, and also Afghanistan. Many of our citizens are going like that. And during World War I, a lot of Chinese laborers used to go to work during World War I. Why? The work that time was to dig the trenches in the war fields. And then Jimmy's work, he was graduate from Yale, right? His work was to write letters for them and read letters for them, because the Chinese laborer were not able to read and write. They were illiterate. So every day he used to write and read letters for them, and also translate news for them at night. And it was a hell of a job, don't you think so? There were, hundreds of thousands of laborers working there. And how is it possible for him to write letters for everyone? So Jimmy Yan, he got an idea, why not to teach some of the smart Chinese laborers read and write. So he derived some 1,300 characters. They say character, okay? Not alphabet, they don't have alphabet. Characters, that is Chinese vocabulary, basic Chinese vocabulary. So he taught, he selected some smart Chinese laborers and taught them these 1,300 characters. First, he taught maybe 10 or 20, and then another 100 and 200 like this. So then he found that they can learn, read and write. That was a great discovery. I'm talking of 100 years ago, right? So it was a great learning for him, and it was a great success. Using this basic Chinese vocabulary, a lot of Chinese laborers, they could read and write. And in 1921, after the end of the war and also after the end of the Spanish flu, he formed National Association of Mass Education Movement, MEM. And he set up a village campaign in Dingxian in Hebei province in China. And then between 1926 and 37, he organized nationwide campaigns involving volunteer teachers, local leaders, and taught students who could not pay high tuition fees. And among the volunteers were Mao Zedong, who became the first president of China later, leading the revolution. Imagine that campaign attracted more than 5 million students. He continues his work. In 1948, he formed Joint Commission of Rural Reconstruction. In 1952, he organized similar campaign in Philippines, and later in Colombia, Guatemala, Ghana, India, and Thailand. So I find this story one of a good examples of how a development philosopher can help develop a society. Of course, this development is not directly related to economic development. It is related to literacy first, and then the economic. So this is a good example of development initiated by a development practitioner, a philosopher, whatever say. And here is his philosophy, formed by Jimmy Yen. Go to the people, live with the people, learn from the people, plan with the people, work with the people, start with what they know, build on what they have, teach by showing, learn by doing. Not a showcase, but a pattern, not a piecemeal, but integrated, not odds and ends, but a system, not to conform, but to transform, not relief, but release. This is how we can help a community of poor people to develop. Thank you all. And finally, I have an assignment for you. The assignment is, please look at this YouTube, what is development? This is a panel discussion including Nobel laureates at INET Hong Kong. You can find it in the internet. And after watching that, please write 1-page note, not more than 1 page. 1-page note. The topic is development a vague concept? Because you can, or you will find in many of the texts written, development is a vague concept. Do you really think so? Development is a vague thing? Do you really think so? having a school, having a health post, having some fertilizer for the farmers. Is that a vague thing? Is that complex? So please write one-page note. Is development a vague concept? And watch this on YouTube. Thank you very much.